We're in our second week of this Welcome Table series, exploring what it means as the people of God to practice hospitality. We believe that hospitality is a core mark of what it means to be human in the way that God intends. Last week, we talked about the greeting of a meal. This week, we talk about the place settings. Now, I confess, I had to look this up on Emily Post because I didn't do cotillions or some other kind of etiquette course when I was growing up. So I'm sure you all who are of much higher class than me, this is second nature and you already know this. But there are particular rules about where you put people at the table when you host a formal dinner. The host of the meal sits at the head of the table, and then the spouse of the host sits at the other end of the table. The man of highest rank sits to the right of the hostess. The man of second highest rank sits to the left of the hostess. The wife of the highest ranked male sits to the right of the host, and if that male is unmarried, then the highest ranked female sits to the right of the host. I know, you all knew that already. It's second nature to you, but I had to look that up. When I've been part of organizing table arrangements, ordinarily it's figuring out how we might get some folks together who are acquaintances at present, but who we think with time shared together, they might become friends. Oh, let's have these people over and these other people over, Rebecca and I say. I bet they'll really hit it off. Or we try to do the opposite. You try to put people at the right place at the table to keep certain folks away from others. Maybe even at different tables entirely, so that this year there isn't a big fight over politics at Thanksgiving. Where you put people at the table can determine whether the meal is a success or a complete disaster. In his best-selling novel, A Gentleman in Moscow, Amor Towles tells of Alexander Rostov, the main character's gift for figuring out where people should sit at the table. In the book, Rostov is a deposed count from the old Russian order who's been thrown out because of the Bolshevik Revolution. He now has to live under house arrest in the Metropole Hotel in Moscow for the rest of his life. And one night, the count goes to the dining room and he sees a fight about to break out between two tables. And stepping in on behalf of the maitre d', he diffuses the situation by moving one couple to a different table across the restaurant with a large flower arrangement between them and the others. The maitre d' comes up later and thanks him for his quick on-the-feet thinking. And the count responds by saying that he has been particularly gifted at figuring out where to seat people since he was 15 years old. He then remembers how at the holidays, the dignitaries of the old Russian order would descend on his grandmother's home every year for a Christmas meal. The province had 100 prominent families, which over the course of 2 centuries had intermarried and divorced, borrowed and lent, accepted and regretted, offended, defended, and dueled, while championing an array of conflicting positions that varied by generation, gender, and house. At the center of that maelstrom was the Countess Rostov's dining room with its 2 tables for 20 standing side by side. The young count, as a 15-year-old, is charged with figuring out where to seat everybody in this arrangement for the Christmas dinner. He goes out in the garden to focus and figure out where to put everyone. His sister follows him, and she chides him, saying, "It really doesn't matter. You don't have to be this particular. People can sit wherever. We always have such a delightful time at these dinners." And the young count responds, "I'll have you know, dear sister, that careless seating has torn asunder the best of marriages and led to the collapse of the longest-standing détentes. In fact, if Paris had not been seated next to Helen when he dined in the court of Menelaus, there never would have been a Trojan War. Knowing where to seat everyone makes or breaks an event." The story of Jesus in the home of Mary and Martha has a great deal to do with where people are or are not seated for the meal. The first thing to note is that there is a protocol to follow in welcoming Jesus into the home. Just a few verses before, Jesus sends out his disciples with instructions that when they go to a town, they are to be welcomed into the home, they are to eat whatever is served to them, they are to offer a blessing of peace, they are to heal the sick, and they are to proclaim the kingdom of God. So the protocol when welcoming Jesus into your home is to bring him into the house, provide him with something to eat and drink, and then listen to what he has to say. Martha seems to know that protocol, and she's really good at the first two pieces of it. She's taking a significant risk. Perhaps that's the origin of her worry and her distraction. You see, Martha, in following the protocol, is risking her own life because she is a single woman who owns her own home. That is not normal in the time of Jesus, but Luke tells us of no men, no husband, no father, no brother that she lives with. Martha could bring shame on herself. She could bring shame on Jesus, this single woman bringing a single man into her home. But she wants to be part of the Jesus movement. And so to do that, she follows the protocol. She does the first two things really well. She welcomes Jesus in. She goes to prepare the dinner. And you can feel that Martha, this woman of independence, this woman of competence and fortitude, she is going to get the protocol right. No detail will be missed. But then her sister, Mary, injects herself, as younger sisters have a tendency to do with older sisters. Martha remembers when she would prepare a snack after school, apple slices, cheese, crackers, and she would turn around to put the block of cheese back in the refrigerator, only to turn around to see that Mary had climbed up the stool at the counter and had her cheeks stuffed like a chipmunk. Or Martha just wants to hang out with her friends at the sleepover, but Mary insists on barging in and changing the music to her favorite song. Or then there was that graduation celebration. Martha, valedictorian of the class, everybody comes into town, but it was the same weekend that Mary and her boyfriend broke up, and so Mom had to spend the whole time consoling her. She was hardly in any of the graduation photos. And now, as Martha is trying so desperately to follow the protocol of faithfulness, she turns around and sees Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus. Now, to our ears, that sounds like Mary's oblivious, entitled, maybe selfish in not paying attention to the needs of her sister. But it's actually worse than that. Jesus is a rabbi. And when rabbis teach, they sit. And the rabbi's disciples sit at their feet. And the only people allowed to be disciples of a rabbi are men. Martha's beside herself. Martha has already taken a significant risk bringing Jesus into her home as a single woman homeowner. She's worked hard to maintain her reputation and to keep living in her peculiar way. Opening her home to Jesus puts that delicate balance on the line, but it's a risk she's willing to take. And Mary, the younger sister, bulldozes over Martha's life, her carefully constructed Lincoln log house. She just smashes it to smithereens by sitting at Jesus' feet. Mary is going to undo everything Martha has worked so delicately for. She's disrupting the entire order. And so in her fear and in her anxiety, Martha comes off as a little aggressive when she tries to triangulate Jesus into this conflict. Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. Pretty bold, right? But bold in a way that displays to Jesus, hey, I know how this is supposed to go. I believe in following the protocols and arrangements. Mary's breaking rank here. Help me get her under control so she doesn't ruin everything. And Jesus, it appears, has to then call out after Martha because she returns back to her meal preparation. He says her name twice. Martha, Martha! You are worried and distracted by many things. That's the key to the whole exchange. It isn't that hosting Jesus well is unnecessary or wrong. It is that Martha is operating out of a place of honor and shame, from a place of pride and anxiety. Jesus continues, but few things are needed, indeed only one. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken away from her. Martha, I appreciate your hospitality. You are doing such a wonderful job of welcoming me. But Mary hasn't broken rank. She can sit at my feet just like the rest of my disciples do. I came to your house, Martha. I'm not worried about what the neighbors think. I come to care for you. I come to teach you about the kingdom of God, where you can all be welcome as full participants and not walk that delicate balance of independence and social respectability. Jesus is not rebuking Martha here. Jesus is extending grace to Martha. Martha, who clenches her to-do list tight in her hand. Martha, who's worked against impossible odds to carve out this life for herself. Martha, who keeps her chin up as she hears the derision of the neighbors in the streets and avoids the meddlesome matchmakers in town. Martha, who tries so hard to do everything right and to show Jesus that she's worthy of being part of his movement. Jesus comes to her with grace. Y'all, Jesus knows what pressure you're under. He knows what ridicule you endure. He aches for you in all the things in life that worry you, all the distractions that consume you. He sees how we can get so caught up in ourselves that we're no longer able to see who we are in the eyes of God. He even honors the ways that we try to untangle ourselves from those situations, like trying to undo a knot in a necklace chain, but you just keep making more problems until the tears start to flow and you throw your hands up in failure. Jesus instead offers a way other than convention and expectation. Mary does not embarrass him. Martha does not concern him. Just sit down. Sit and hear the word of grace. Sit and receive the word of life. There's nothing we have to protect. There's no performance we have to perfect. Only one thing matters: who we are before Jesus. Just sit with that.